With holiday season just around the corner, some of you may be thinking to yourselves, oh boy, I really want to buy myself a new eShop game this Christmas, but I don't know what to get. Well, I have you covered, because in this video, I'm going to be highlighting 10 of the best eShop games you can buy with your digital money. And if you just so happen to not find a game that you like today, make sure to check out the rest of my series on eShop games worth buying, because you might just find something to tickle your fancy. Oh, and by the way, in the last video, I made the bold claim that it was the 10th one of those videos, meaning 10 videos about 10 eShop games, 100 games total I've reviewed on the eShop. That would have been really cool if it wasn't a lie. Turns out I miscounted because I'm an idiot. That was actually video number 9, making this video number 10. So happy 100. Let's do this one more time. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's dive into the eShop. The very first really cool game I want to talk about today is Chasm. I swear on every single one of these lists, I have highlighted at least one or more Metroidvania style game worth your money. A lot of devs seem to lead towards this style of gameplay. It has such success in the indie world, but every now and then there's that one that really knocks the genre out the park. Chasm is the newest and one of the greatest I have found yet. Very closely resembles the Castlevania portion of the genre's name, while adding in a more open freedom of the Metroid side, splicing in some RPG elements and wrapping it all up perfectly in a randomly generated skin, meaning every time you play, your map and game layout will be completely different to anyone else's, with just some areas being the same, those of which containing the upgrades and items you will need to continue kicking enemy butt throughout your playthrough. And there is a lot of juicy enemy butt to be kicked in this game, with over 100 different enemy types. Why did I say juicy? Luckily, it's not a permadeath situation though. You don't die and then have to start over in a new layout each time. You get to play all the way through the world the game builds for you, no matter how many times you die, and that takes about 8 hours. To be fair, I probably would have preferred a more hand-tailored adventure from this game, but knowing that my experience is my own is a really cool concept. If you love a good Metroidvania, you will love the great Chasm. Hello, wake up sheeple, fellow Nintendo YouTube reviewers out there, ya messed up. Did anyone else notice that the Child of Light just dropped on the eShop one day? I'm guessing not, because I didn't see anyone talk about this game, so let me take it upon myself to talk about Child of Light. My first time playing Child of Light was on my Nintendo Switch Junior, my PS Vita. Yes, this is a PSP, my Vita is downstairs and I'm lazy. Not created by an indie dev team as the graphical style may suggest, it's actually developed by Ubisoft, and they did a fantastic job with the hand-painted visual style blended with elegant animations. Every location in this game can take your breath away, the same way any beautiful painting or art piece can, with charming characters to go alongside it. The gameplay is really cool, blending side-scrolling and RPG elements. The exploration and puzzle solving throughout the game is very enjoyable. The combat utilizes an active time battle system using both real-time and turn-based elements. Oh, and you can cancel enemy moves by getting your attacks in first, so you are constantly watching that cast bar for your enemy's next moves, waiting for the perfect time to strike. That leads to some very strategic gameplay which constantly keeps you on your toes. All the while, you control your little friend here by moving the right thumbstick, waving him around the screen, slowing down enemies or picking up items. You add that mechanic with switching between characters and using all their abilities, and then you start to see the bigger, more complex picture in these battles. The entire game is engaging, near perfect for the genre, and just a fantastic job by Ubisoft. Next up, we have a game called Tricky Towers. Hey, I did it. Okay, I didn't do it. I see a very simple concept like this, specifically a puzzle kind of game, and my brain goes, nah, where's the exciting action-adventure game that I'm actually looking for? But in the case of Tricky Towers, it might not be one that you want to gloss over. About a year ago, I found myself at my friend's house playing some games on her PS4, and she booted up Tricky Towers. I very quickly became super competitive and kept challenging her to round after round of tower tipping fun. I literally looked through pages and pages trying to find a replacement word for fun that started with T, so I could have tower tipping T something, but the only similar T word I could find was titillating. Tower tipping titillating. Wow, I'm 28. So anyway, you stack up your tower Tetris style, but rather than trying to clear blocks, your goal is to keep as many of them stacked up as possible. Have the highest stack at the end of the time limit and you win. As you play, you gain abilities to either help yourself, like gluing certain bricks together, which helps build a stronger foundation, or the good abilities that help you mess up your opponent, like dropping random objects on their stack out of nowhere. There's other modes you can play around with too, but my favorite is by far the head-to-head mode. It's simple but effective, so grab yourself a friend and get competitive. Batman, the enemy within. Where is she? I'll keep this one short and sweet so we can avoid story spoilers. Also, y'all know how Telltale games work at this point. With the recent tragic to me news that Telltale was closing its doors, it shocked me to find out only days later that Batman the Enemy Within dropped on the eShop. And I'm not kidding, I waited for this game to get a sequel on Switch for the longest time so I could continue my playthrough. And the day after Telltale announced they were closing, I gave up, went out, and bought the sequel on Xbox instead, only to have the sequel drop on the eShop. So for no other reason than to have you guys not make the same mistake, I want to highlight Batman the Enemy Within right now. Regardless of all of that, Telltale's take on Batman was not only a really well-crafted Batman story, but it was also one of the more enjoyable Telltale games in my opinion. I thoroughly enjoyed my playthrough, even finding myself struggling to make certain choices in the story, even though we all know that typically in these games the choices don't really amount to much change. But that didn't matter to me while I was playing because I was so engrossed in the story and interested in the characters and the world that I felt my own personal impact every time I had to decide who to save or what to save. So if you did play the first one on Switch, it's well worth continuing your story into this sequel. Actually, somewhat of a funny story, that same day that I found Tricky Towers at my friend's house, the very next game she booted up when we were done playing that was Towerfall. I think it's kind of ironic that both games I played that day made it onto this list. One's about stacking towers and one's Towerfall. Although the game has nothing about towers falling, it's just a really fun game. And I gotta tell you, for an 8-bit indie game featuring just a bow with only 3 arrow shots, the hunt is so real. It's an up to 4-player deathmatch game where you start with 3 arrows and die in 1 hit. You can also kill your opponents by head stomping them Mario Goomba style. And while it may look basic, it's absolutely frantic. Conserving your shots for just the right moment is so rewarding and feels amazing when you pull it off correctly. Dodging your enemy attacks make you feel like a freaking ninja, and you can be happy you made them waste one of their precious arrows, although you can pick up those missed arrows and store them for later when you need them. As well as if you can time a dash perfectly into an incoming arrow, you can pick it up, catch it out of mid-air, and leave your opponent even more frustrated because a split second earlier they thought they were wiping the floor with another kill. Oh, and falling through the bottom of the floor and appearing out the top in an attempt to line up an enemy head bop. All of that adds up to a surprisingly large amount of strategy and tactics for a game of this style. And there is a lot of content packed into this game with over 120 maps. I was wonderfully surprised by Towerfall. Crazy amounts of fun. Point and click alert. How annoying is that? Scale of 1 to 10. This is the part of the video where I want to give you a point and click alert. If you've watched my other eShop videos, y'all know that I like to try and cram in at least one point and click adventure game because it's one of my favorite genres of video games, and the Switch is chocked full with them, and it just makes my heart endlessly happy. So I would like to highlight Broken Age as today's point and click adventure game worth playing. Broken Age is just one of those games I would have played no matter what kind of game it ended up being, purely due to who made it. Tim Schafer has made such incredible games as Grim Fandango, Day of the Tentacle, and Full Throttle. His company Double Fine made Psychonauts and Brutal Legend, 2 more fantastic games, and in 2014, they made Broken Age. I played it back then, I loved it, I still love it, and now it's on your Nintendo Switch. The obscure mind of Tim Schafer is once again on display, and visually the game is the exact gorgeous hand-drawn style of art that I love in my point and clicks. You could frame almost any scene in this game, hang it up in your house, and your guests will compliment you on the stunning art piece you have that really ties the room together like a great rug. Oh, and the animation is very high quality, which just makes the whole world feel alive. The story bounces between hilarity and grim reality, focusing on 2 different characters, simultaneously telling each of their stories. stories. Shay's character is a lonely guy stuck in space, and for all he knows, he might be the last human alive. And Vela, she's surrounded by friends and family who are all a-okay with her being a human sacrifice to a giant monster beast. So clearly she could do with getting away from everyone for a while and having a bit of alone time. These two stories make for great juxtaposition as they weave in and out of each other. The comedy is on point with some real laugh out loud moments like you would expect from Tim Schafer, but what I did not expect was the sheer depth, emotion, and brilliance behind the characters, the writing, and the story. Oh, and the puzzles are fantastic. They feel so lovingly crafted, it takes me back to playing Monkey Island 3 for the first time. And if you ever get stuck on a puzzle, you can take a break from that character and switch to the other one, which is a really nice touch. Even if you aren't a hardcore point-and-click fan or even a Tim Schafer fan, I still recommend checking out this very charming and very well-written game. Oh, and the list just keeps getting better and better, people, because we are at Hyperlight Drifter time. Hyperlight Drifter takes the pixel art visual style and transcends it to a more impressive or inspiring place. The music is just as breathtaking as the visuals, and the world's atmosphere is eerie yet peaceful. The game is set in the aftermath of a war. The world is littered with corpses of fallen giants. All the while, the main character appears to be dying, constantly coughing up blood and experiencing weird visions. And my favorite part about the game is that there is no written or spoken dialogue anywhere. Talking to other characters in the game presents images, leaving you to interpret the entire story for yourself. Everything is a mystery for you to solve, from the story to its exploration and the gameplay. And it feels really open, leaving you to decide where you go or what you do first. And the combat and controls are extremely tight. You are equipped with a sword as your main weapon, as well as a gun. You charge up your gun by slashing your enemies with your sword, which in a good way forces you to use an even mix of the two weapons. Also, you can use your dash move to quickly avoid enemy attacks or to move in for a sudden strike. For me, the entire game is captivating, engaging, and thought-provoking. I am completely absorbed in the world, in love with the combat, and the game just gives off serious Zelda vibes, and it won't disappoint you.
Oh, okay, brother. If you're ready for some high-octane, blood-pumping action, then Broforce is the game for you, brother.
Okay, anyway, if you're like me and you love every over-the-top, stupid but awesome action movie you can get your hands on, and you know, you also happen to love video games, whatever, then Broforce is probably right up your alley. Featuring a huge cast of characters all bearing the likeness of every action movie hero you can think of, and they all have their own special abilities which leads to different play styles to go along with the carnage. And it plays like a high-octane, steroid-pumping Contra game where every time you die, you respawn as a new random bro, ready to take on any and every enemy that stands in your way. Which is all part of the fun. Who you get changes up your playstyle on the fly, and hey, if your last bro just died, then clearly he couldn't handle the heat anyway. You can play this run-and-gun shooter game with up to 4 players, demolishing everything in your path until you reach the end of the level and get to the chopper. Oh man, I cannot do an Arnie accent.
Get to the chopper. Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper. Well, that was more Donald Trump. You can play as such bros as Rambro, Brohard, Brodread, Bro in Black, Brobocop. That's the best one, Brobocop. The Boondock Bros, and trust me, it just goes on. If you enjoy crazy action, badass soundtrack, and a buttload of silly humor, you and your friends will love Broforce. The Messenger is a game that so many people wanted me to talk about, so let's do it. This game is an 8-bit style. Oh, sorry. It's a 16-bit style. Okay, actually, it's both. Whatever. Anyway, The Messenger is an action platformer just like old school Ninja Gaiden, and what? It's actually a Metroidvania game? Which game is it? Is it 8-bit? Is it 16-bit? Is it like old school Ninja Gaidens, or is it a Metroidvania? Make your mind up. Well, actually, it's all of it, and that's what makes it awesome. This game seamlessly switches between 8 and 16-bit graphics throughout your gameplay, and the first half of the game will be spent in an action platformer genre, and the second half will open it up to allow you more exploration and even completing things like fetch quests. All the while, you will be face blasted with some of the best chiptune music I have ever heard in a video game soundtrack. Plus, when you switch between the 8 and 16-bit styles, the music has 8 and 16-bit versions as well. What a game! Jeez. From the start, everything about the game's combat will look and feel just like NES Ninja Gaiden. But fast forward a couple hours, once you have loads of upgrades and new abilities, suddenly the game takes on its own gameplay style and it's freaking awesome. The platforming gets crazy thanks to the fact you can double jump, but only if you're able to strike something with your sword first. And so a lot of the platforming in the game is built around that mechanic. The Messenger is a very ambitious title, and if you're a fan of the older NES and SNES games of this genre, you owe it to yourself to check it out. And even if you're not, if you're just up for the challenge, The Messenger will be waiting for you. And now for the last game on today's list. I really wanted to do something different for this spot, something crazy that I don't usually do, like a rhythm game or an eating simulator, just something other than an action-adventure RPG. But as I was scrolling down the list of eShop games I haven't reviewed yet, I got to Bastion, and I realized I've never reviewed that on my channel, so stop everything, forget all the other games I've talked about, let's all talk by and play Bastion, because it's the best indie game of all time. Oh. I almost passed out. I honestly believe Bastion is the indie game that got me into indie games. Nowadays, indie games are everywhere. Some of the best games you can go out and buy are brand new indies, but several years back, like let's say in 2011, indie games didn't have the brilliant reputation they have now. I know even I overlooked indie games back then. Why would I go out and play something so minimalistic like this when I have my new AAA Batman game that just came out? That was my mindset at the time, and I don't even know why I played Bastion or how it found itself into my Steam library, but it did, and I played it, and I instantly fell in love with it. Bastion opened my eyes and my heart to indie games, and I began to dive deeper into the rabbit hole from there with games like Braid, Limbo, and so many more. But I will always have a special place in my heart for Bastion. You play as the Kid, and you move through floating, fantasy-themed environments fighting loads of different enemy types. While the combat is fluid and incredibly enjoyable, it's the super smooth and badass narrated voiceover that really ties the game together. I loved every single bit of dialogue. He narrates almost every move you make, and it adds so much to the game. Unlocking all the very different kinds of weapons and upgrading them is super rewarding, with so many layers of gameplay to peel away. If you like the look of Bastion, start this list today by playing that one, and then work your way through the rest, and then work your way through the rest of the other lists I have. 100 eShop games total, which makes Bastion the 100th eShop game I've ever reviewed. The 100th game on these lists was technically Bastion, the game that started it all. I'm just realizing this now for the first time. I didn't plan this at all. I love this. I love that this has happened. It's like it was meant to be. But anyway, if you guys liked this video, if you learned a little something, or maybe if you found a brand spanking new game to play today, make sure your hair flip all over that subscribe button. Click or tap on this video right here because I know you haven't seen it, and every time you don't watch one of my videos, I go hungry. Happy 100. I'm hungry.